Hello, I'm Tony Kay. Welcome to Property Point once again. I'm joined as always by Nerida Conisby from REA Group.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, very good, Nerida. Now, Nerida, you've just written a great piece for us on the most in-demand suburbs around Australia. There are a few surprises in there. And I just thought we could talk a little bit more about, what's happening in terms of in-demand areas and searches through REA Group.
Yeah, so we measure most in-demand suburbs by looking at the number of people looking to buy in a suburb and comparing it to listings. So we have around 6.5 million searches per day. So it does give us a fairly clear idea as to the types of housing that people are looking for, but also the suburbs that are really popular at the moment.
In your article, you wrote how Hobart is really getting a lot of attention at the moment.
Yeah, Hobart is still off the charts on our site. So last time we did this analysis was about 6 months ago, and we started to see a little bit of Hobart in that top 10 list, but Melbourne was still dominating. This time around, 7 of the top 10 most in-demand suburbs in Australia are in Hobart, and South Hobart tops the list.
And why is that?
I think Hobart's just becoming very cool. So you've got Mona, you've got the foodie culture there. You've got tourism, a really strong growth in tourism, so that's been a factor. So I think the Tasmanian economy is shifting from a fairly government agricultural economy to quite a diverse economy. And we're seeing very high rental demand on our site in Hobart as well. So it seems to be changing a lot. And when we have a look at the suburbs that people are looking at, they're almost like the Newtown or the Richmond of Hobart where people are looking. So it does look like a lot of young people are looking there at the moment.
Now, we've talked about Hobart a few times before. The actual prices in Hobart have been increasing quite well. Do you expect that to continue?
Yeah, look, we think it will continue. And to be clear, when we see suburbs with very high demand, they do see fairly strong price growth following those levels of demand. So I think in Hobart, I mean, it's not all of Tasmania. We're certainly not seeing Launceston come up on the list. It's very much an inner Hobart story. So it's South Hobart. It's places like Belrive as well. So, it's kind of an inner Hobart period home type story there at the moment.
Now, I'm delving into my memory banks, but I think Warrandyte in Victoria was in that top list of suburbs.
Yeah, Warrandyte was number 1 actually 6 months ago. So it's now jumped down to number 4. But Briar Hill is sitting at number 2. So we're still seeing a lot of Melbourne suburbs, but Melbourne northeast and east. So outer areas, big homes, big blocks, fairly high levels of, great lifestyle. So I think that area does seem to be absorbing people who are wanting fairly affordable property, but also wanting, fairly big homes as well.
Yeah, it's a real affordability thing, I suppose, with the most searched suburbs. People just looking for those areas which they can get into a bit cheaper.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. Like when we have a look at behaviour on site, people want lifestyle factors. So they want a good, they want good retail, good schools, good public transport. They want a big home, but they don't want to pay too much. And the price point where most people are looking is around that $650,000 mark. So, when we have a look across Australia, a lot of the suburbs that pop up are at that price point or sort of hovering around there. I mean, Sydney was so interesting because Sydney, there's very few properties at that $650,000, but Central Coast is, again, coming up on the list because it is far more affordable and people can get the big home on the big block at a price that they're comfortable with.
Yeah, I was surprised to see when I was looking at the various tables that you had that, some of the suburbs in Sydney, Adelaide and even in Perth, they're still quite expensive suburbs where people are looking around.
Yeah, I think Adelaide Unley always comes up as number 1. It's always the most in-demand suburb in Adelaide, and I guess it is one of the most expensive suburbs in Adelaide, but still it's relatively affordable. And when we had a look for Adelaide, it was primarily inner Adelaide that came up. We saw a few suburbs in the Adelaide Hills, so that was new. So Crafers came up on the list, and that was a new occurrence. We went across to Perth, though. It was very much an inner Perth story, and also that Northern Beaches area. So those areas are already seeing quite strong price growth, but very strong demand on our side as well.
I noticed Peppermint Grove in Perth was in there, and that's a 3 million plus suburb. So it's obviously some people have still got fairly deep pockets.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, some of the suburbs in Sydney were well over $1 million as well. So, you know, there are some suburbs in there that are very expensive. So I think although we talk a lot about affordability, there's no doubt that some people have a lot of money, and that shows up in demand.
Well, I guess we'll keep track of those in-demand suburbs as time goes on and see if there's any, significant changes.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, thanks very much, Nerida. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And thanks for joining us again on Property Point.